Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Kiran Kumar K, Professor of Psychiatry at Vaidya Institute of Medical Sciences and Research Center, Bangalore. I've been coordinating the special program on Sundays called Sunday Special 60 Minutes with Psychiatry Teachers since March 2021. So this is a pan-India platform to share our experiences as teachers. And it's a combined effort of IPS Faculty Training Task Force, IPS UG Education Subcommittee, and IPS PG Education Subcommittee. It is also it is supported by Minds United Trust from Mysuru and the ITOPS Forum. We've been successfully conducting various programs on this platform. The last program on 10th of October, which was World Mental Health Day, was on various scholarship initiated by the trust along with ITOPS to encourage psychiatry teachers. Today, for the special program, we have psychiatry teaching learning reflections on various surveys that we have conducted. With this brief introduction, I would like to call upon the chairperson and moderator for the day, Dr. S.M. Manohari, Professor and Head of Psychiatry at St. John's Medical College, Bangalore. I welcome you, ma'am, and hand over the session to you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kiran. And at the outset, I'd like to welcome all the participants and the speakers for this program and greatly appreciate all the efforts by this IPS subcommittee for UG teaching and PG teaching, both Dr. Kishore as well as Dr. Kiran for all the efforts in bringing about the 60-minute Sunday 60-minute programs as well as today's programs. The teaching of psychiatry is very important. I think I will be preaching to the choir when I talk to this audience, but I think it is important to emphasize that psychiatry and psychological issues in people are very common. And as an undergraduate especially, learning some psychiatry is very, very important. The ability of a student to learn is definitely dependent on how the teacher teaches, how the teacher makes the subject interesting. And it is easy to make psychiatry interesting. The attention that the teacher has to pay to make learning enjoyable, to instill in them a desire to know more about psychiatry is what we need to focus on, rather than the particular aspects of psychiatry itself. We need to make psychiatry interesting so that students will go back and read and pay attention to the psychiatric aspects of whichever branch of medicine they are posted in or they are working in. With that brief introduction, I would like to request the speakers to start. The first speaker will be Dr. Professor Mainik Bishi from who is the professor and head of psychiatry at MGM Medical College, Aurangabad. He will be giving us his view of how they trained students during the COVID-19 pandemic. Over to you, Dr. Mainik Bishi.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. And at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for this very good initiative for teachers of psychiatry. I will be taking all of you through this 12 or maybe maximum 15 minutes program that I will be presenting. And what I am doing is not what we actually did, but in fact, we had conducted a survey during the second wave, exactly between the April and mid of the June. So that surveys few preliminary results which are important to our specialty that I am going to present in front of you. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to see psychiatry teaching, learning, and evaluation during COVID pandemic in India, or I would say across the India. As said before, we had conducted a survey, and that was and got the responses from across the India and from major institutes, from various teachers. Now, learning objectives for this session are, at the end of this session, all of the viewers of this program should be able to have a brief overview of how was the UG training status, training of interns, and PG training during the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially over almost a period of 14 months that had elapsed when we were collecting these results in the form of a survey. At the outset, I would like to request the IPS committees that have taken this initiative of teachers of psychiatry, that please formulate a database of teachers across the India, because when we were about to start this survey, or we thought of this survey, the first difficulty that arose was how to have access to teachers across the India, because there is no database. Even IPS directory doesn't mention or doesn't categorize as who are the teachers and who are the in practice. And the difficulty becomes manifold because many teachers are practitioners as well. So majority will be giving the address in IPS directory of their either practice or home. So it's a very difficult to approach the teachers across the India. So my humble request to this task force that if you take this mission on for next 3 or 4 months to collect the data just by Google Sheet or whatever way you feel is better, that will be a huge help to the teachers of psychiatry across the nation. Now we'll be talking about our findings. Now, for UG training, all of us know that yes, the lockdowns first as well as second, and the time frame between the two lockdowns, or I will say 2 waves of the COVID, had been very, very hard for the UG training. In the first lockdown itself, there was a complete disruption of UG training. Students were sent home, and that was the time when the need for whether feasibility of online teaching can be done rose, and few of the institutes, they took the initiative and started the online teaching. If we look at the first pie chart this year, our findings show that 57% of the teachers had said that in their institute, UG training was disrupted completely and partially by 28. Now, only 15% had said UG training continued as it is. Maybe the students were available for them to teach. So that might be the reason. If we look at the clinics, majority had not taken any clinics. Almost 60% responded no clinics were conducted. And all of us know that our branch is a very abstract branch. Just theory teaching won't make our students understand the phenomena unless they are demonstrated on the patient or elicited by them on the patient. So that's the major impact that our UG students got in this pandemic. And when we look at this was the I'm sorry for the title is not there, but whether the online training was initiated, at least lectures were initiated or not. And we can see that yes, over a period of around 14 months till the second wave, many colleges had started the online training by various platforms that are available. only 14% surprisingly didn't start that also. When we look at the interns, most of, that is 80% of the interns were taken away from psychiatry department and they were posted elsewhere, especially in the COVID area, and in some institutes they were sent home as well. Now, what is surprising is, on one hand, for CBME curriculum, if you look at, there is a whole pandemic module that has been given by NMC, and UGs as well as interns were sent home when actually the pandemic was going on. So, not looking from the fear front that they will contact the COVID-19, yes, that is appropriate fear, I agree to that. But somewhere I feel that my UGs and interns missed the opportunity to learn the pandemic module when pandemic was going on. And that is reflected by the findings. Now, whatever the internship was lost, and once the lockdown was over, and when things started to normalize in between the two waves, there was no effort by institutes or departments to compensate the training that was, sorry for this, training that was lost, and there was no compensation actually. So once lost, the interns were not trained either partially also. And what is another interesting finding is that at least partially, most of the interns had missed the opportunity to get training in the psychiatry, as can be seen from this third diagram here. Now, when we come to the postgraduate training, now PGs are our torch bearers for psychiatry, or I will say they are the psychiatrists of the future. And all of us, from personal experience in our own institute, are aware that under the Epidemic Act, everybody was serving for the COVID or COVID related areas. And the front line were medical professionals that were our residents. Yes, it is a humanitarian crisis and humanitarian need, but what is unfortunate is that my residents or my postgraduates have only 3 years designated for the training as a psychiatrist. If they miss that portion, they will miss a significant proportion of learning that happens during the residency, and that will impact their future career as a psychiatrist, as a teacher, or as a practitioner, whatever they prefer to. Most of our postgraduates were posted in COVID care wards. CC wards is COVID care. So wherever I will write CC, it means COVID care. So 84% were posted in the COVID care wards. This duration varied. Say for my institute, we have that data of duration of posting also. For my institute, almost for 6 to 8 months, the postgraduates were in the COVID care ward. In fact, in the second wave, we were provided a ward of around 34 beds to look after the COVID patient independently. Just one physician was supervising 2-3 wards, and he used to take around, but the rest of the things were on us to take care. So everybody was almost fully into COVID care, but my residents, what they had missed is almost 8 to 9 months of training in psychiatry during that period. Same thing I think is applicable to the most of the institutes. Now, another significant aspect is here, conversion of psychiatry ward. In fact, our institute had dedicated during the first and second wave around 500 beds for the COVID, and where from these beds came is the other wards were taken as a COVID care wards, and our ward was almost taken up for if we consider the both waves together, almost 8 months, and that was converted to COVID care ward. So obviously that has impacted the bedside learning, case-based learning, as well as self-directed learning that these our residents usually learn when they sit with the patient and elicit the various phenomena that they read from the books. And that is a significant missed period or missed opportunity, which I think cannot be compensated within the 3 year span, because now they will be having thesis and other aspects to look at. Again, PG activity. Now, what we say as a teacher is whatever weekly PG activity programs, say case discussions, journal clubs, or seminars, and problem-based learning, all these along with various other newer methods of teaching and learning are there. They are implemented across the institutes. But unfortunately, this pandemic has disrupted or rather stopped these all teaching and learning activities in the majority of the institute, as seen here in this pie chart. When it comes to evaluation of our postgraduates, again, there was a difficulty. As far as I know, for Maharashtra, it was a deemed university which has conducted exam after the first wave, whenever some relaxation was provided. I think it was conducted in the June 2020 with difficulty. But most of the colleges which come under Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, their exams was deferred by 6 to 8 months for the reasons quoted as non-availability of examiners or need of residents to work for the COVID care. Because once the residents will pass, they will be out of the purview of the institutions unless they are into certain bonds. So the need of residents, that triggered the extension of their work in the COVID for almost 6 months. And we can understand how difficult the time was for these residents who were about to appear for exam and become psychiatrists. But unfortunately, their tenure was extended, and most of the times that tenure was not paid also. So it was a very difficult time for my residents who were learning psychiatry in Maharashtra. Other states, I don't know because we have not included that question, but I am speaking for my state here. Now, another aspect that was all the universities, and as far as MCI or NMC, they had a norm to seek the externals for the exams. And the norm usually is the 2 examiners should be from the outside the state. And most of the colleges who had conducted the exams had this difficulty in getting the externals. NMC later relaxed the norms. Second option was given to pick the externals from the other university within the state, or if that is also not possible, within the same district or nearby place you can take, even if it is within the university. But majority had faced the getting externals for the postgraduate exam as a very difficult situation, even with these relaxed norms. And I remember getting the calls to come for conducting exams, but unfortunately we can't run at different places because there were many responsibilities related to COVID care that were allotted to us during the second wave also. In fact, that was a time when we were managing one separate COVID ward also. And the authorities of the institute were not ready to release us even for conducting exams. And same difficulty we faced. Many examiners rejected because deans did not give any permission to go to conduct exam in the view of COVID situation. So these are the brief things that happened to psychiatry training across the India, because these are the findings from across the India, and I have just presented the frequency analysis. A lot of data is there, which due to the paucity of time, I could not present. Few positives, I would like to end on the few positives that happened. Teachers and students suddenly became, or rather I will say, were forced to become technology friendly, because virtual learning and or learning on the virtual platform became the new norm. And we learned that clearly that teaching, learning, and evaluation is possible on virtual platforms as well. And all of us are now aware that LMS, that is Learning Management Systems, in the form of MS Teams, or even Zoom has its own system, Cisco WebEx, Google Classroom, Google Teams, StreamYard, and many other platforms have become available to conduct the teaching, learning, as well as evaluation activities. And these platforms, especially we are using MS Teams here, it has an inbuilt system for taking attendance as well as sending the assignments and getting the responses as well. So that is what I think within a span of 15 months or so, we have been able to learn LMS as well as use it to the benefit of both teachers as well as students. New agendas, though they were there before also, like Udemy, Coursera, these are the platforms which were there before, but during this pandemic, we have got what we say, more friendly towards these platforms, and various certificate courses that are offered on these platforms like Udemy and Coursera, which have made us opt for learning from the universities across the world, not only India. And there are very good courses, especially on the Coursera, that I have gone through. And most importantly, when the campuses opened post-lockdown or post-COVID wave recession, we found that students were very eager and were craving for actual patient-related learning, or learning from the patients in the form of cases or the various activities that we take in person. And that was, I think, another positive for psychiatry as well as teachers. Thank you. Thank you for your patient listening. I think we'll be having a question answer session in the end.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bishi. As you had mentioned, we will have the question answer sessions at the end. Probably focus on how we can take this forward, use of technology that all of us have become masters of, or trying to become masters of, how we can use that in the future also. What are the plus points of this method of teaching, as well as the perspectives of the students who endured the pandemic and worked as corona warriors rather than just learning psychiatry. Their perspectives also would be good to know. And from your experience, if you could share that, Dr. Bishi, we'll come to the discussion at the end of the presentations. Now I request Dr. Pratibha Gilawat and Dr. Mukesh Kumar Swami, both associate professors at the Department of Psychiatry, AIIMS, Jodhpur, to present their findings on online teaching for undergraduates. Go ahead, Dr. Pratibha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for previous speaker. So I will be continuing from where the previous speaker, sir, he has left from there, that there are many positives which we have learned from this pandemic. So I will be talking about this online teaching for medical undergraduates. I hope the screen is visible to all.
Yes, Dr. Pratibha, if you can move it to present it. Yeah, it's perfect now. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. So I will be talking about online teaching for medical undergraduates. sir has already depicted in his previous talk that there are many missing things which the undergraduate as well as the postgraduate students they missed out during the COVID-19 pandemic. But online teaching, it is the most important positive which has come out for the learning experience. So I will be talking regarding this. This is not changing. Okay. So with the background that COVID-19 pandemic, it has led to the forced immersion into online teaching for medical undergraduates as well as postgraduates, because online mode of teaching, it offered quick solution to continue teaching in most of the educational institutions. Although medical students and teachers explored new ways of learning, teaching for online learning, but the competencies to teach online, they require faculty as well as students to adjust their attitudes towards technology and teaching simultaneously. So with this background, I will like to proceed with the rationale for online teaching in the medical training. uh, it is not that the studies were not done before pandemic. There were a lot of studies which were done before pandemic which concluded that the results showed that the online teaching in medical training is encouraging. It has been found that e-learning resources can supplement medical learning because they are easily accessible and facilitate flexible and on-demand training for the medical students. The interactive web-based tutorials were found to be better for cognitive learning compared to traditional teaching methods. It has also been found that learners using virtual patients and blended learning performed better than traditional teaching methods in the skill domains. And it has been proposed that nowadays more than 90% of the students, they have access to internet, and students try to access web for the medical studies. So there is a dire need to exploit this tech savvy attribute for learners for online teaching and learning. So as already have been said that in 2018, the NMC has introduced the competency-based medical education curriculum, and the goals, the learner goals or the medical graduate goals set are the knowledge, skill, communication, attitude, responsiveness, and values. So to achieve these goals, there are various pillars of competency-based medical education, that is knows how, shows how, and performs competently. So this is a process in which the knows how component, it includes the knowledge and concept regarding the subject or the skill. In the shows how part, further the medical undergraduate is able to perform, able to reproduce whatever knowledge he has gained or skill he has attained in the objective examinations. And further the last and most important part, the medical undergraduate is able to perform competently. That includes that whatever the undergraduate has learned, he or she is able to deliver it in the realistic setting, that is in the outpatient clinics, in inpatient wards, or in the community, etc. So following these pillars of competency based medical education, how online teaching and these two can be linked, or how online teaching can be helpful in the competency based medical education curriculum. As we know that competency based medical education curriculum, it encourages traditional learning methods for the clinical exposure. As we all know, being teachers, that this is the most convenient and very experienced methods which we are following over decades. But the online teaching can serve as adjunct to this curriculum, competency based medical education, because it can provide best available evidence online to the medical students. It can keep up the students with the latest medical updates, and it can be helpful to strengthen the students research abilities. So overall, the goals which are set up in this CBME curriculum, they can be reached through this online teaching adjunct to the traditional teaching methods. So coming to what are the common online teaching learning tools or platforms which are used generally in the undergraduate as well as postgraduate program. Two modes are there, asynchronous and synchronous. Asynchronous mainly include the discussion boards, quizzes, polls, emails, recorded audio or video, recorded slides with narration, etc. And the synchronous, in which the live interaction is there, includes virtual classroom, live presentation, live text chat, instant messaging, live audio or video chat, or live quizzes. So these are different tools which are now available, and we have become friendly to these tools also, as already described in the earlier talk. So, what is the foremost thing which we have to do for the to achieve this to achieve positive learning outcome in the online teaching learning? So, there are different type of interactions. So, what is this? How we can get the students engaged in the online teaching activities? So, different type of interactions include learner to content. So learner to content is like the learner is able to interact with the academic material provided by their faculty or their teachers. So it can be done through online videos, PowerPoint presentations, virtual simulations, webcasts, webinars, video conferencing. So second type is of learner to teacher. So mainly in the live interaction, or the student is able to interact with the teacher both in the asynchronous or synchronous mode. Both can be used. So it can be done through online lectures, seminars, discussions, e-portfolios, or emails. And the third one, which we usually miss, is learner to learner. That is very important because peer interaction is very important in the undergraduation period and post graduation period. So peer interaction, learner to learner interaction can benefit and help us to achieve the positive learning outcome. And we can use social media like Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, online seminars, or group work for the students for the same. So if we compare the advantages of e-learning versus traditional learning, we can say that e-learning, the online learning, it is usually of low cost because digitalization has now taken place all over our country, and there can be flexible schedules like we are doing it on Sundays, and the night time or early morning time or whatever time which is convenient to the student or teacher, because there is the option of pre-recorded lectures and other things also. So convenience is there and flexible schedules are there, low cost is there, and that is why there are some advantages. And traditional learning, obviously we all know that more teacher student support is there, interaction is more there, and more social interaction, better clinical skills are imparted in students through this. So how we can, so this is, there are certain advantages to both type of learning. So we have to make a blend for this now. So to blend for this, there are certain competencies which are required for online teaching. uh, Online education requires teachers to improve their competency in three major areas, that is pedagogy, technology, content knowledge. And it is usually a method of effective teaching practice specifically developed for online teaching. So I will be briefly telling about what are the things which a faculty or a teacher needs to know or build whenever delivering any content to the students. So it includes knowledge and skills as well as the attitudes. So knowledge and skills include the resourcefulness and knowledge of pedagogical skills of the faculty, technical skills and competencies related to online methods of interaction, and comfort in preparing the online content. Example, the time management part. Also, the attitude is also important as the knowledge and skills, because if the attitude is negative, the learning outcome will not be good. So overall attitude towards the concept of online learning should be positive, and there should be the attitude also include the perceived usefulness and perceived burdensomeness by the students as well as the faculty. So I will be talking about various challenges we faced. So a cross-sectional online survey was conducted by the faculty from AIIMS Jodhpur, from which I was the part as primary investigator, and it it was based on to assess the faculty's readiness and perception towards online teaching platform for undergraduate medical students during COVID-19 pandemic. So a total of 125 faculty from different teaching medical institutes from India gave consent and filled the survey questionnaire, and out of these 11 were excluded as they were not involved in the undergraduate teaching. As we think that under the postgraduate teaching is advanced level of teaching and learning experience, so it includes more things, so that is why only undergraduate part was taken into consideration. So main findings of that study, some preliminary findings, we found that most of the faculty, it was a positive finding that most of the faculty, they had adequate knowledge and skills regarding the online preparation and delivery of the classes, but with some limitations that over 90% of the faculty, they felt the need to have more creative resources for online classes. More than half did not feel confident to handle the technical issues, which was found to be a lacuna. Student engagement factors were the common hurdles in online teaching, and majority felt lack of connectedness with the students during online teaching. So they uniformly express the need for further training for online teaching platform, and the online teaching, and it was also suggested that the online teaching platforms are useful and should be continued as adjunct to traditional teaching in medical education post pandemic also. So these are some positive outcomes, but with some difficulties in the execution of the online teaching platform. So I can uh, um, uh, just make these in point form that there are various challenges which are faced by both teachers and students, and these are mainly considered to be apt in the developing countries like India, where the manpower is very less, and where there is lack of infrastructure and resources, and definitely most of them, they had lack of skills, because in our survey it was 125 faculty which were included, and most of the faculty, they have been missed all over India. So many state medical colleges which do not have the infrastructure and which do not have the technical support from the institution as well as the government, so they are not very well equipped, and the
Okay,
faculty.
Pratima, you have 1 more minute to finish, please.
Okay, ma'am. So lack of skills, student engagement factors, poor communication at various levels, time management, negative attitude. So these are various challenges which were found. Possible solution may include faculty development workshops in addition to subject knowledge is suggested to enhance the development of different attributes by faculty to bridge the gap between effective use of online teaching. These are effective in guiding and enhancing faculty to achieve new roles and competencies for online learning. Various factors like pedagogical, interface design, evaluation, technological resource, support, management, institutional, etc. should be considered while developing these faculty development programs. So there should be focus on this thing. So way forward, the present COVID-19 crisis has given us the opportunity to explore, and with the advances in technology, online learning is likely to become a new normal. So it is suggested that the blended teaching learning model may be incorporated in medical education by using the emergent technology. Integration of online teaching with standard classroom teaching in medical education is likely to enhance the quality of learning. The adoption of flipped classroom model can be considered as beneficial because this model provides more quality time with teachers as well as peers to focus on clinical context, more difficult topics, and discussion of applications. And adopting the innovative ways to deliver the required and desired outcomes is recommended for the medical educators. So to conclude, online teaching learning assessment in medical education is relatively new. However, it has the potential to become the mainstream. Presently, online teaching can be blended to face-to-face learning as an adjunct. The faculty needs to be competent in their role to ensure the online learning environment that effectively facilitates learning of students and achieve positive learning outcomes. So it is strongly recommended that stakeholders of medical institution and different medical institutes put their academic experience into practice and give a scholarly vision for the practical solutions for maximum benefit to the medical students. So, thank you so much. the question and answer session will be at the end. So I would like to thank you all for
Thank you, Dr.
listening.
Pratibha, for that panoramic view that you have given us about different ways we can use virtual platforms to teach undergraduates, as well as for the findings of your survey, which brought out some very positive findings that people do find virtual teaching methods very useful, and a blend of both might be very appropriate to use. And that students also liked the virtual teaching of methods and were able to learn adequately. We will take questions at the end of the after all the presentations are over. You can either raise your hand to ask a question or write the answer question on the chat box. Now I request the next speaker, Dr. Abhimanyu Chandak, who is from Mysore, to give his to deliver his lecture. He will be talking to us about the postgraduates' perspectives on psychiatry training and glimpses from a survey that he has conducted. Go ahead, Dr. Abhimanyu Chanda.
Thank you, ma'am. Just wait a second. Can everyone see my screen?
10 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Can everyone see my screen? Am I audible?
Yes, your audible. Screen is perfect. Go ahead.
So we had done this survey in July 2020 during the first wave of the pandemic itself, where we put out questionnaires out to both postgraduates as well as undergraduates. And I think the next speaker will be covering the undergraduate part. So I will talk about the postgraduate part here. And so I'll be covering it in basically and talking about why the study, why we did the survey, how did we do it, and then coming down to the results. So about 11% of the population of India, adult population of India, is suffering from mental illness. And this was found by the National Mental Health Survey, which was done in 2015-16. Another study which was done later on in 2019 found that there are only 0.75 psychiatrists per 100,000 population in India, whereas the recommended sort of statistics is that there should be 3 psychiatrists for every 100,000 population. So going at that count, we would have to produce about 27,000 more psychiatrists are currently needed. And with the rate at which we are going right now, which is about 700 new psychiatrists every year, we would need at least 40 more years to bridge the gap between 0.75 to 3. Which is why we felt that, the quality of psychiatrists or the quality of psychiatrists coming out of institutes needs to improve to bridge the gap till the numbers reach there. So what we did was we created a survey on Google Forms. The survey was anonymous. It had both quantitative as well as qualitative questions. It also had questions about the effect of the pandemic on postgraduate education. And we also asked the postgraduates themselves to give solutions. We circulated these through social media, basically just sort of a snowball method where we passed it on to other postgraduates who sent it away, then on Facebook, on Instagram, on various social media platforms, where we asked them to get back to us through the survey, through the Google form. And we tried to cover basically postgraduates who were either who were currently studying or who had just passed out in that academic year of 1920. So because we did it through social media, we got almost a good coverage all across the country. And as I already mentioned, this was done in July of 2020. And the results were collected and analyzed. So let's move on to the results. We'll be covering the quantitative results first. So we had a good distribution across the years of post-graduation. Apart from the first year, we got almost an equal percentage across the second, third, and the ones who had already completed. Most of them rated their experience with psychiatric residency or the learning during psychiatric residency as being about average, with a very, very small percentage saying that it was below average. When we talked about them to rate their teachers, with the teaching skills in specific areas, as we can see, we got a lot of average in journal clubs, whereas most of the other places, it was average to below average. But journal clubs was one place where the postgraduates felt that the teachers could do a little better. with exposure to teaching experience during the training, again, it was average to above average, but then there was a larger percentage that said that teaching experience was below average. So they were not, either they did not teach too many undergraduates or interns, or for whatever reason, due to the case burden, or due to the pandemic in itself, or say due to unavailability of undergraduate students, then they experienced a certain lacking in the teaching side of postgraduate training. With respect to external postings, so for example, the neurology, or say in these autonomous institutes which have multiple specialized branches, we had a sort of even board all throughout. So almost 29% did not have any external postings. And when we come to the discussion part, we will see what the comments of the postgraduates were regarding that. But otherwise, it was average to above average. They were pretty satisfied with their external postings. So just a table to cover it out. So the demographics were 24 to 38. Almost we had a good distribution among gender, good distribution among type of institution, with private being the predominant institution that we were able to approach. Most of them were doing their MDs. We had no DNBs. We had one other person who was doing a fellowship. Most of the institutes did have MBBS in their curriculum, did have undergraduates with them. Only about 7 did not. And again, as you can see, they were either in their second year or third year, or they had just passed out. So we had very few from the first year responding to this. Again, this is just a table. I've already spoken about this in the figures, but if anyone wants to pay attention to the table, then they can go ahead. You can look back at the recording. I'll just move on to the next part, which is the qualitative part, which I feel had a better outcome. So qualitative results, I've just divided them into 5 different sections. So firstly, talking about the assessments. So something that they all did talk about was that a single day assessment seems very arbitrary, seems very, very random, where, just because a person does not perform on a single day, he's either passed or failed, or, left out in that manner. Whereas they found that something of a regular assessments at regular intervals would be much better, or they felt would be much better. And I'm glad the previous speaker talked about CBME, because that is what focuses on regular intervals, on assessments at regular intervals. They also felt that the current assessment pattern focuses a lot on the theoretical knowledge, while not focusing as much on the clinical application side. With respect to external postings, all of them felt that specialized areas were places where they required external postings. They said the time should be somewhere between 4 to 6 months. And a lot of them did comment that a little more active involvement from the places where they were being posted into would help them in learning better. With areas of interest and areas where they felt that this was lacking, was one foremost thing that came across was psychotherapies. So they all felt that psychotherapies, training with psychotherapies or training in psychotherapies was lacking across psychiatric training. Other areas of interest included somatic treatments, neurology. Some people said child and adolescent psychiatry. Some people said forensic psychiatry, and that was a little more personal thing. What did stand out were the first two, which is psychotherapies and somatic treatments. Now, we move to the impact of the pandemics. Again, the previous 2 speakers have actually covered it quite well, but still, just from our survey, academics definitely took a huge impact, a huge sort of hit, where they did not have regular academics as previously they were having. Bedside clinics and lack of patients totally had a huge impact on their training with when they come out, and how confident they would be with dealing with patients, or how confident they would be giving their exams, right? External postings completely stopped. So specialized areas remained in certain colleges remained completely unexposed. And there was an increase in the non-psychiatry workload. And I think Professor Vise has really enlightened that the ward itself was turned into a whole COVID ward, or postgraduates are posted for a long period of time in these non-psychiatric workplaces. With respect to suggestions and solutions, what they did say was that approach to teaching in general needs to be more practical and structured. So it needs to be focusing on what they would be seeing once they are out of the postgraduate. So once they are, say, in their own clinics or in a different medical college setup, what kind of practical knowledge would they require, right? Then they moved to a little more, we had more suggestions for the pandemic. So they talked about online platforms for academics, and now that has improved significantly. Improvement in web-based learnings, case scenario-based learnings. They wanted to be trained in telepsychiatry, what are the do's, don'ts, how do they go about, creating a telepsychiatry platform, not just a platform, how do they go about with telepsychiatry in general? How do they approach a patient? What is the consent that is needed? What are the drugs that can be prescribed? What are the therapies that can be done? So this was something that did come out. So I'm actually quite done. There was not really too much in my presentation, but just to summarize it, the overall learning experience of postgraduates remain mostly average to above average. Some of the shortcomings that need to be addressed are journal clubs. So the teaching experience that they had in journal clubs they did not feel was optimum. Their exposure to teaching experiences, so to them teaching either UGs or interns, or maybe even they can be a point where they're teaching among themselves, first years or second years, that they felt the exposure was very low. They also wanted a little more regularity, little more structure with conducting academics. They found a huge gap in training in psychotherapies, and a lot of them did say that they felt like they were sent out into the world where without a complete quiver of arsenals. They felt, then we know that psychotherapies is very important when it comes to treating a patient. Lack of MBBS programs had a large impact on teaching practice for the postgraduates. They felt that single day assessments, as I've already mentioned, very arbitrary, very sudden. They felt it was better if they were assessed at regular intervals rather than in a single day. They wanted external postings for specialized areas. And I think use of technology, it has come up, it has increased in the past year, but more, it needs to be embraced much more in medical education in general, especially in psychiatry. I think that's all from me. So as they've already mentioned, the questions will be taken in the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Abhimanyu. I think you have given us a lot of food for contemplation. Many things that you have brought up, which really needs to be addressed. If the postgraduates think that our teaching is below average or just average, then I think we as teachers need to do a lot. Some of the positives that you have brought about are also important, but I think the lacunas were more glaring for me. We will come to you with the questions after the next presentation is over. I think there are lots of questions that we would like to ask so that we understand better how we can move forward to teach our students better. Yeah. Now I request the last speakers of the day, Dr. Smriti Bhargava and Dr. Ramasamy. Dr. Smriti is from Baroda and Dr. Ramasamy is from the USA. They will give us the undergraduates' perspectives on psychiatry training, a glimpse from their survey. Dr. Ramasamy, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Just a sec. Is this on slideshow? Is everybody able to see this?
Yes, the slideshow is fine. You're audible to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just to introduce myself, my name is Dr. Ramaswamy Sundarajan. I graduated from JSS Medical College, Mysore last year, and currently pursuing my licensing exams to practice in the US. Smriti unfortunately isn't available today to be a part of this presentation, but I hope I can do justice to this. You'll find that a lot of things that I talk about have already been covered by almost every speaker, and I'm going to try my best not to overlap on anything, but if I do, just a disclaimer on that. So just to kind of piggyback from what Dr. Abhimanyu Chandak said, we dealt with the undergraduate perspectives on psychiatry training. We took a survey in July of 2020, and we tried to understand what undergraduates thought about psychiatry training, what they wanted, and also, how they kind of what they perceived were, things that could improve. So obviously, like as Dr. Chandak rightly said, I think one key factor for conducting the survey was the increasing burden of mental health illnesses in India. We know that every 1 in 7 individuals suffers from some kind of mental illness, and in addition to that, the rates of depression, anxiety, burnout have seen a steady increase in medical students. I apologize, I've not added that there, but among medical students, that number has increased. So, we also want to understand how important psychiatry could be to help medical students as well. So, obviously, it's kind of a boilerplate survey with 105 responses, which was spread out to Karnataka, Gujarat, and other states as well. This was the various institutions split out with 33.3% in the government, private medical institutions was 59, and autonomous was 7.6. These were some of the responses that we were able to get out of it. So the question was, according to your psychiatry teachers taking allotted classes in your institution, obviously like a large number of them said yes and regularly. A few did say irregularly, and maybe a very minuscule, slightly diminished, not very significant percentage said not at all, but it was good to see that regular classes were being conducted. The next aspect was to kind of evaluate on a slightly to understand how good the teaching was, and we graded that on good, fair, and poor. And you can see that a large percentage, in contrary to what Dr. Chandak said, a large percentage felt that the teaching was good. I'm sure, like obviously it's a survey, there's recall bias and all of that, but it's good to see this, and that there's a large percentage of individuals in the undergraduate section that feel that their psychiatry staff are doing a good job. What percentage of scheduled psychiatry classes does or did your batch attend? I think this is obviously very important. I think any undergraduate who's been through medical school, the numbers are pretty glaring. You can see that only 21.4% said that they attended 100%. You can see a large percentage at 75, some percentage of 29.1 at 50, and then you have a small percentage that's at 25 and 10. And obviously this is something that that undergraduates should also understand, in my opinion, that psychiatry is an important subject. While it's commendable that that there are 21.4% of people who've attended every class, hopefully at some point we'll have the tables turning. So these were some of the questions that we asked, and some of the responses we were able to get on the quantitative side. And the qualitative side, as to what UGs want, I think a key aspect that was constantly addressed was psychotherapy. I feel like what undergraduates pointed out was, even though this is something that's trained at the postgraduate level, they kind of feel the need to be able to break bad news to patients. They want to learn how to counsel a patient, at least at a basic level, if they suffer from depression, anxiety, bipolar. And so that was something they wanted to learn about. They wanted a separate section on suicide prevention and addiction, given that it's a huge buzzword, so to speak, among the medical fraternity, especially medical students, given the numbers have been increasing over the years. The other thing is obviously differentiating points in core symptomatology and more in-depth understanding of basic diseases such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. In addition to the survey, obviously there was also a panel discussion that discussed these 4 aspects. And I put them in a pyramid because obviously the base is your theory, and then that's built on clinical training, and that's built on the assessment. that how you're evaluated in psychiatry, and finally it summates with intern year when you're completing your internship as a doctor. And some of the suggestions that came out of this, just to kind of quickly go into it, a few of them did suggest actually that psychiatry should be made a separate paper. Obviously, I understand this is, obviously I leave it to the discussion for of the esteemed guests to talk about it, but it's interesting to note that AIIMS Rishikesh did kind of come out with a separate paper for psychiatry, and there were students who were interested in having something like that. They obviously, like with the CBME and the way that psychiatry is, I believe it's allotted a certain percentage in the general medicine paper. They want that to be a little more fixed because it's not necessarily the same across all institutions. And more than anything, I think that the integrated teaching and testing is what a lot of UGs wanted. For example, if you're studying neuroanatomy in say first year, going into psychophysiology and then psychopharmacology in second year, some kind of integration with each year kind of helps them understand the nuances of psychiatry better, starting from the ground up, rather than to have theory classes in second year and then internship in intern year with your fourth year as well. Ultimately, I think that when we're writing answers for psychiatry, UGs tend to feel that the descriptive answers, which tend to be more of rote-based learning, where they're not really understanding, how to diagnose a case and what exactly to look for in patients. So they're more open to case-based learning, as Dr. Abhimanyu pointed out, with clinical vignettes. And they also spoke about having smaller group activities, maybe some seminars, some log books, to kind of assess for assessment specifically to see how you're doing during your posting. And this is already incorporated in the current CBME, but this is just something that was pointed out. With respect to the clinical aspect and internship, I think we know that we have OSCE stations, objective structured clinical examination, for various subjects over the years, whether that's in physiology where you're focusing the microscope, whereas where in say pediatrics where you're asked to talk about various vaccines or something. So in the same breath, I think there's also a suggestion of having similar stations in psychiatry to assess patient medical students' practical knowledge of say breaking bad news, rapport building in patients with guarded attitude, handling patients with a violent behavior in your clinic, counseling a patient with suicidal tendencies, and that is something that might help. And then, of course, I think an internship, this was obviously in the past, it was 15 days, but it's not uniform across all institutions. Some of them end up having only 7 days, some of them end up having 8. So that is something that was unequivocally spoken about. This is also something that was spoken about initiating maybe a program like ACLS or BLS, where you're dealing with acute medical emergencies, to have a 2-day intensive training to treat major psychiatric disorders and emergencies, to give medical students a better picture. So just to kind of conclude, so this is what the current climate for UGs looks like from the CBME. Obviously, psychiatry has been assigned a separate subject code, and there are 45 competencies. And the good thing is, obviously, they've added 2 more weeks of clinical postings in third year, phase 1, which accumulates in 1 month. But obviously, a lot of suggestions coming in from UGs all across India, and I hope that maybe we can discuss about it and take things forward. Obviously, I understand a lot of things might be personal preferences, but on the whole, I think that psychiatry is here to stay, and I hope that we can take this forward. I don't have anything else to say. These were my references, and thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Ramasamy. I think that was a very interesting survey's results, very interesting results that have come up in your survey, especially the qualitative part. I am certainly glad that your survey has shown that the undergraduates have rated psychiatry teachers and teaching as better than average, or average at least. What we will do is we will take questions now and focus on discussion before we wind up and ask for opinions from the speakers also. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand or write the question in the chat box. While we are waiting for questions, can I ask a question to Dr. Bishay, please? From your survey, I know you looked more at the difficulties that people had during the pandemic and how much it was affected. I agree with you that most of the psychiatry wards all through the country were converted to COVID wards, and we had only a small ward rather than our usual ward. And the number of people with the lockdown and things attending psychiatric clinics had decreased. Though most of us were doing teleconsultations in the hospital, I don't think it covered the need adequately. Do you have any thoughts about what the students felt, your students, especially the postgraduates who finished this year? I think they were the ones most affected by the pandemic.
Yes, madam. In fact, in another survey after we completed this, we had conducted another survey among all residents in our institute itself, data from which I have not presented here. And it shows that there was an urgent, in fact, what we say, severe burnout, that the term we use. And they felt an urgent need to take the break from the situation, as they were the frontliners and they were pushed for extra hours of duty in COVID ward as well. And both times when the COVID waves happened, we are aware that it was a hot summer, especially here in Maharashtra. It was a very hot summer, and they were into that suits, protective suits and all, and they were frustrated. And so what we did, like I'm going ahead of your question also, that what we did is we just arranged for their ventilation purpose, because we can't conduct the sessions due to their busy hours. So we allotted in 1 hour on a platform like this Zoom platform itself, 45 minutes that it allows for free. So those residents who really felt that yes, who are need to ventilate, they used to come and talk with our final year resident, or they were just allowed to speak whatever they want. And in that survey, those who were found to have actually either severe anxiety or depression as well, they were asked to visit us in person, and few of them actually came and got the medications as well. So that's the perspective from the residents.
Thank you, Dr. Bishev. A similar thing that we also had in our hospital, we had an anonymous telephone line, we had bail-in groups, we had several types of resources available for people who were stressed during the pandemic, all healthcare workers, not just doctors or residents, and it was not utilized at all. We made modifications, we made it more accessible, but our conclusion was that culturally, probably we are not a group of people who take this kind of help. Probably they are more comfortable talking to families or whatever. Fine, we are moving away from the topic. Any other questions? Anybody? I think there is a question on the chat box. Is the CBME batch in general better than the previous batches, at least with respect to attendance to psychiatric clinics? This is a question by Dr. Kiran for all the speakers, and any of the teachers in the audience also can answer this. is the CBME batch in general better than the previous batch, especially with regards to attendance to the psychiatric clinics? Any thoughts, anybody? Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go
I would
ahead.
like to partially answer it, because at my institute, when the campus reopened, the attendance, the clinics were scheduled, only clinics were scheduled. And unfortunately, as we have been repeatedly seeing happening in the medical institution, psychiatry was given the least preference for allotting the clinic schedule. And so for psychiatry per se, I won't be able to comment, but feedback from the other faculties is that yes, this batch is better than the many other previous batches because of a few things like foundation course that had made them interact with the teachers directly, as well as their grasp over the subject due to the ATCOM modules and all that had increased very much, and teachers are quite happy with this batch. But as said, not for psychiatry because we can't comment. They have not come to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts or opinions? Dr. Kishore, do you have? Yeah, Dr. Ramasamy, please go ahead.
Just as an undergraduate's perspective, unfortunately, I don't have sort of data to describe the year distribution of each of the individuals whose survey we took at this time. But I think that on the whole, I can't speak to attendance, but I think that there is more intrigue and more interest in the field of psychiatry simply because I think there's more access to knowledge, and there's more. I think India has really caught up with the West in terms of how important it is to, especially to medical students, to understand what is burnout, when to not push themselves too far, the importance of, understanding each other's, perspectives and all of that, and how important mental health is playing in each of our lives, especially with COVID-19. So I think that I feel, at least as a projection, I think that over the years, I think attendance in psychiatric clinics will improve drastically. And not just in clinics, I think theory classes as well. And that's just my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ramasamy. I think that perspective from a student is very, very important. Dr. Kishore, what are your views?
Madam, I think the COVID had a great impact in our understanding what exactly the students in competency-based medical education batch would do. And there is a study which is ongoing by Dr. Nimi Chandran from the Government Medical College in Kerala, who is looking at comparative picture of psychiatry learning with CBME batch versus non-CBME batch. I think that study is due for the report by end of this year. This is one thing I have, but personally, I think CBME first batch, we should name them as COVID batch, and there is very less information how exactly these people are learning. Probably in the next subsequent two batches, we should be able to have some information if there is really some difference between the CBME and the other batch. Thank you for the input.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on this question?
I totally agree with Dr. Kishore, because the CBME, it was introduced in 2019 for the first batch, and in 20 COVID came, so we cannot actually assess the impact of CBME. No batch has been passed after introduction of the concept of CBME, but definitely the ATCOM approach which is followed in the CBME curriculum, so that is very helpful, at least in interaction and understanding the students' perspective, and their ultimately improving their competencies.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pratibha. Just to add my thoughts to the same, attendance I don't think has changed very much with the CBME batch. But one difficulty still that is there in the CBME module is that the core competencies that must be learned, none of them have any psychiatry. There is a long list of psychiatry skills that they need to know, but none of them have been labeled as must know. So no student is going to pay much attention to psychiatry if that trend continues. So Dr. Kiran, please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. So just a question, because at least at my institute, most of them had missed major postings, medicine, surgery, OBG, which was online. And then they were posted to minor postings and the colleges reopened. So they are showing tremendous interest in minor postings. There is full-time attendance in psychiatry. For the first time in at least 12 years at my institute, I'm seeing things. So I thought whether it is replicated in other institute was my probably I just wanted to clarify.
Anybody? Any thoughts? I think attendance, initially at least they are coming. Means we need to wait and see. They have
happens?
15 days and in the first slot, and then again they have another 15 days.
Yes.
First few days, I think the students who are attending are students who will always attend. The ones who are not attending are not attending. So whether it's psychiatry or any other branch, I think that average 60 to 70% attendance is there, which is fairly similar, I think, across all institutions, unless they are not having any psychiatry teaching. But if you look at institutions where there are 150 students, but the requirement is only for one professor, one associate professor, or one assistant professor, then it is impossible to carry out the CBME curriculum. They simply cannot do it because they will also have postgraduate students. It is not going to be feasible, is what I think. So unless the department has enough faculty, I don't think we can follow this curriculum or do justice to the curriculum. Dr. Bishop, please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just I will add to that, madam, even for 250 seats, the same requirement is there. One professor, one associate, and one assistant professor.
Yeah.
Just 2 JRs are needed for 250 seats.
Yeah.
And in that we have to take the CBME. So again, we don't know unless these requirement changes, not possible.
Yeah. Any thoughts about how things have changed or impacted the postgraduate education?
Here in our institute, we had implemented the suggested module of CBME for the postgraduate as well. And we have introduced the new teaching learning as well as evaluation methods. And for teaching learning, apart from traditional case-based learning and seminars, we also introduced the PBL. And that has picked up very good among our residents. So they're quite happy in learning on their own on various aspects. Yeah. And for evaluation, yes, we need to stick to the frame of NMC, but within that we can have some OSCE stations in near future. That is what we are thinking.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. We have used OSCE stations for evaluation. We find that very useful and quite focused and very objective method of evaluation, we find. Dr. Kiran, please go ahead.
Yes. So I think we are running out of time. So with your permission, can we?
I will conclude.
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Just to sum up what has been happening, I think the pandemic has definitely affected all students, postgraduates, in the undergraduates, as well as interns, in how much of psychiatry and how psychiatry has been learned by them. Our methods, I think all institutions have tried several methods to overcome these difficulties and have adapted very well to new learning, new teaching methods. Probably some training for implementing these new training methods is necessary for us, for all the teachers. I think that is very important. Knowledge of how to use the virtual platforms, all of us seem to have learned on our own, but I think formal education for us about how to use this so that a blended method can be used further. Lots of positives about the virtual platforms. So whether we can use a blended method going forward, definitely bedside teaching and classroom teaching cannot be done away with, but definitely some virtual platforms still would be useful. One important aspect that came up from the perspectives of the postgraduates, whether we need to include postgraduate, include training for teaching itself as a core curriculum of the postgraduate training in our MD course is something that we need to consider. And also training for telepsychiatry, I think that is going to remain with us. I think people who have done telepsychiatry do like it, find it an useful platform. If we are able to overcome the confidentiality issues and all the other legal difficulties, I think it is an important tool for us to use. So training in telepsychiatry for our students when they pass out and go outside to work, I think is important. So that's also something we probably need to include in our curriculum. And definitely all the inputs about the curriculum-based, competency-based medical education view. And I think from the society itself, the Indian Psychiatric Society, some amount of lobbying to include in the core competencies, the must know, there should be some psychiatry competencies which are which till now are not there at all. In the more than 100 competencies, none of the psychiatry competencies are should be able to perform individually is there. So I think that's an important thing we need to add. And I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Kiran. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with everyone.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Dr. S.M. Manohari, for chairing and moderating the session. Thank you all the speakers. Before we conclude, I would like to call upon Dr. Kishore for the closing remarks.
At the outset, I'm really thankful to Dr. Kiran, who has been meticulously taking this program every issue of Sunday Special with Psychiatry Teachers. I'm grateful to Professor Manohari, head of the department at St. John's Medical College, and she aptly mentioned that it is the psychiatry teachers' method of teaching which is important rather than the content, which is the important issue. So it goes a long way that our teaching learning has to improve in this aspect. I'm thankful to Professor Manik Bisse, and I want to convey that we tried repeatedly to keep a record of all the teachers, and because Dr. Bisse also heads the teachers group in the Western Zone, I would request him on behalf of all committees, please do and try to record all the teachers' data, and we will also support in that endeavor wherever possible. To Dr. Pratibha, who gave the input about the undergraduate teaching, and she said the hallmark will continue to be blended learning. Thank you, Dr. Pratibha from the AIMS Jodhpur, for making that survey. And to dear Dr. Abhimanyu, who gave the perspective of the postgraduates, and it's quite concerned that postgraduates think that 30% of our training is not up to mark, and it is a reflection for the psychiatry teachers to work and ensure that the training happens in a manner which is useful for the postgraduates. To Dr. Ramswamy and Smriti for the wonderful survey, which gave input that 40% of the sessions are not taken up by the psychiatry teachers, and there needs to be a lot of improvement from the psychiatry teachers' perspective to involve undergraduates, particularly through case scenarios, and make the learning meaningful. I'm thankful to one and all for sparing your time and recording this version of Sunday Special. Over to you, Dr. Kiran. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It's my pleasure to moderate this session. We'll be meeting in the next edition in probably the last week of November. The same will be communicated to all the teachers. So with that, I take your leave and wish you a wonderful Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.